Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world following SMR series of webcasts. My name is Alfonso, creative producer of SMR, and I would like to explain a couple of tips before we start the session, so it is easy for you to navigate in this console. The widgets and areas that you will see in the console are very important for you. So if you want to move the area where you see the speakers, you can maximize or minimize the screen. It's very simple. But underneath in your console, you will see a series of pink buttons. They are called widgets. With these widgets, you actually can contact the speakers, meaning that you can click the Q&A widget, and we will receive your question. If you just want to chat with the other people that is attending this webinar, you can go to the attendees chat, and then you can interact with them. But you can also download the resources that we have prepared for you, materials like the slides of this webinar, and they are located at the Reports and Resources widget. You only have to click that widget. We receive a couple of questions when we run these sessions, like, is this webinar being recorded? Yes, it is recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording. Now, am I able to ask questions? Yes, I just explained how to do that with your Q&A widget. So, without further technical tips, information, I want to welcome you, everybody, of this particular session, how Unilever is enabling purpose-driven marketing with bot-enabled research. So, rather than me continue talking and explaining you the boring stuff that you can experience and explore by yourself, let me invite you, the two speakers, two ladies that we have today. First and foremost, Stacey Grant, CMI Director, Unilever Africa, in South Africa, and Bev Chigger-Bassett, AVP Business Development in South Africa for Borderless Access. So welcome, Stacey, welcome, Bev. The virtual podium is yours.
Thanks, Alfonso. We'll get straight into it. People buy emotionally and they justify with logic. And decades ago, what we saw was that brands had a one-way communication with consumers, while the invention of the mobile phone and internet, with the invention of the mobile phone and internet access, consumers began to voice their opinions and two-way communication started. Now, with smartphones and social media and the internet of absolutely everything, success with purpose-led marketing relies on the ability to speak to your audience in a highly authentic way. And as a result, brands are becoming more and more humanized, with everything from a look and feel to a personality to a tone of voice. And brands are able to customize their offering now to cater to the needs of their target audience. And that requires a truly deep understanding of the target audience from the very beginning. We see that the digital evolution has seen that consumer communication preferences have evolved rapidly. And this means that consumers are becoming increasingly available and accessible through technology at every level, and that their needs and values are changing. And we believe that those changes are here to stay. The new way that we all naturally connect with one another is challenging brands to come up with increasingly creative approaches, and this puts pressure on our research industry to adapt quickly to these changes and to capture dynamic consumer behavior in real time. The idea, of course, is to leverage this technology to our advantage, really, and to meet a new level of human-centric insights that are real-time, richer, and faster. Since the internet started, no app has been as impactful as WhatsApp in fueling the growth of the internet, with the ability to reach across any strata of society. The same is true across Africa, and where we see that the majority of consumers are rapidly moving to digital platforms, and they are already available online. Bot-enabled research, our new technology, enables the collection of both explanatory and really rich exploratory insights, while at the same time creating a better and highly engaging interface for the respondent, which in turn improves the quality of the data that we gather. In recent weeks, together with Unilever, we conducted a study pinpointing towards people's basic needs related to personal and household hygiene for this particular ESOMAR event. And we did this work across Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana, and Africa, sorry, not Ghana. And at this time, I'd like to hand over to Stacey Grant to share a few of the insights coming out of the data that we gathered. Over to you, Stacey.
Great, thank you, Bev. So before I go into a bit more about the research, I did want to give a little bit of context behind why we chose the particular topic that we did. And so I have to talk a little bit about Unilever, my company, for a little bit. So Unilever has been in Africa for well over 100 years. And we make some of the world's favorite brands. And literally every day, around 2.5 billion people are using our products. So what that means really is that we have a huge responsibility and lots of daily opportunities to do good with our brands. Now, doing good is quite a big statement. What do we mean by that? Well, that's about really serving people and helping to solve their real world problems. If we go back to our company's roots over 100 years ago, some of you may not know this, our founder, William Lever, he started up his own business making sunlight soap. He was a social entrepreneur who at the time identified the need for a low-cost branded soap. It was a time when cholera and dysentery in Britain's Victorian slums were really rampant and widespread, and his mission was to find a way to improve people's lives and grow his business at the same time. At the end of the day, his bold and inspiring purpose was to make cleanliness and hygiene commonplace. And still today, over a century later, we continue to put people first and really to strive to make sustainable living commonplace for everyone. So a little bit ironic that William Lever brought hygiene to millions of people who didn't yet know why hygiene was so important. Little did we know that over a century later, we would again be reminded of the importance of hygiene. On this slide, and I might be a little bit biased, but on this slide is, I think, one of the best campaigns that ran both globally and in Africa last year. And we know from research that citizens greatly appreciated it too. Why? Because it didn't feel like something that a brand was just pushing. It felt like a brand that was truly trying to do good by educating people on how to fight COVID-19. And something else that was really appreciated was if you look at the bottom of the advert, you can see there that we weren't just advocating for Lifebuoy. We actually call out some of our key competitors in terms of really just encouraging people to use whatever soap they have available. So I think a really great example of a brand not just talking about purpose, but actually taking some real action. Right, so on to the research. A few weeks ago, Bev reached out to me and offered to partner on a piece of work that could help us understand the people that we serve in Africa a bit better. And so with all of this talk of hygiene and just how increasingly important it's becoming, we agreed that it would be the right topic to cover. Bev's spoken about WhatsApp and how highly penetrated it is. We know from previous research we've done on the platform as well that it's a very highly trusted platform. It's a platform that people engage in conversation every day. So we know people are generally quite trusting of it. They're quite open and honest, and talking with voice notes and emojis is commonplace behavior. What was new in this case, as Bev referenced, was the use of a chatbot versus the more manual human interventions that we've deployed before. And I have to say, I was a little bit of a skeptic at first. Some of the questions I was asking is, would citizens be as trusting, as open, as conversational with a bot? But actually, the automated chatbot research facilitated a more natural and connected conversation with the audience, and was obviously able to gather really rich insights from their day-to-day activities in real time, which really is a game changer for research. Being able to get feedback from people in the form of video, images, voice recordings, that level of rich insight has proved to be hugely beneficial. One of the things that Bev and I spoke about when we were initially discussing the research was that This need to really have empathy in today's world is becoming so much more important. And we saw the use of this chatbot over WhatsApp, over a platform that people trust, as a real way to engage with humans and start to build more empathy for them. And again, it's something that really surpassed my expectations in terms of the feedback that we got. So obviously faster and more cost-effective than traditional research, which is always something that we as the client are looking for. But again, that empathy coming through as well. The part, though, that I believed would be the most important and also the most challenging when Bev and I discussed it was reaching the true mainstream citizen. We know that digital research methods can tend to skew to urban and probably higher income citizens. So, I was also a bit of a skeptic on that front as well. Would we really be able to speak to the true citizen of Africa in these three countries? The majority of the market, who we know live below or very close to the poverty line. And again, I was really impressed with the outcome. So we managed to reach a representative sample. And the other thing which you can see on this slide is 475 responses in 3 days, which again, really, really impressive and allowed us to gain some really rich insights. Right, so I won't talk through everything on here, but just looking at some of the findings, what's very clear, even just at a glance, is what we probably, many of us know of Africa, that it's the furthest thing from a homogeneous continent. There really is a lot of diversity, and we see it at this level as well. So the hygiene challenges and needs really quite different across the three countries. If you look at South Africa, where basic formats are very highly accessible and adopted, and even if you look at things like liquid gel, hand wash, and body wash, some of those more sort of premium formats also are quite highly penetrated. And then down to Nigeria, where water scarcity is a real concern, and yet despite that, a third of the market relying on that alone to clean themselves. So just quantitatively, some really quite startling data coming through. This quote from Kenya really has been sitting quite heavy on my heart. Something like access to water, access to basic hygiene. These should be human rights and a level of dignity that is quite common. It's not a luxury. And yet you see here in this comment from this person in Kenya, that sometimes access to basic hygiene and water feels like a luxury. So really some insight into a real pain point and a problem that we all have a responsibility to do something about. Again, some sobering feedback from people about just how difficult it is to access very basic hygiene needs. Again, talking to water accessibility, only having access to cold water, and I know, just speaking as somebody who's very privileged, it's one of the main reasons I absolutely hate to go camping. The thought of that cold shower at the end of the day. And how pompous does that sound when I see this sort of feedback from people who, this is just a daily challenge if they have access to water at all. Sadly, the story is very similar in Nigeria. And when Bev and I were looking at this presentation and putting it together, we really wanted to pull the pictures in that were shared with us from the WhatsApp, because a picture really does say 1,000 words. And again, that's the benefit, and that's the empathy for me that comes through in this sort of research versus just a survey or an interview with somebody. Getting them to share visuals that bring these insights to life, I think, is very powerful. Moving to South Africa, we definitely seem to go a little bit higher up Maslow's hierarchy with effort, things like effort and time saving against tough cleaning coming through as a pain point. That said, we know water shortages are increasingly a threat in the country, and COVID-19 has had an absolutely devastating impact on unemployment as well as livelihoods in general. And for anybody who's following the news, you'll know that we're in a bit of a new crisis at the moment on top of COVID-19. And we don't yet know what impact this will have on the country, but we do know it will bring more challenges. Right, so this leads us to the point, I think I've spoken through some of what was different across the three countries, but we did find quite a few common factors in countries in terms of what's holding people back, what's preventing people from better access to basic hygiene and hygiene overall. And what we see is things like high costs of products emerging, poor quality products, and of course, lack of government support. The quality point, I think, is a really important one for me, because I think it's so easy when you work in a continent like Africa to think that, you know, people would be willing to trade off on quality for cost, but we know that that's not the case. You know, these are human beings that we need to serve as well, and they have equal rights to high quality, dignified solutions. And that's, you know, really the challenge and the opportunity we have in terms of bringing products that they can afford to the market, but that they don't have to trade off on quality for. So what are people looking for? How can we help them then? Clearly, there's a need for affordable options. There's a need for these options to be available. So it's great to make the products. It's great to get them to a good price point. If they're not available in the places where people shop, that's not going to help. And anybody who works in Africa will know that route to market is a significant challenge, and especially when you weave in the affordability need. Because you need to find a really efficient way to get to the shelf so that you're not adding on additional costs for people. You know, things like, and again, this is so interesting when you think of the space of purpose, right? Because when we talk about purpose, maybe in places like Europe and America, it might be more about, you know, saving the planet and reducing plastic use. But something like, you know, offering promotions, giving out free samples, could these be purposeful spaces that we need to think about more in Africa that don't maybe feel like sort of traditional or conventional purpose spaces? And then, of course, you know, communication, spreading awareness of, you know, and that Lifeway example is a great example of that. You know, helping people, we know people in today's era where they live and breathe with their smartphones, they're researching and looking for information all the time. People are information hungry and very grateful to brands and products that give them information. And then, of course, portfolios. You know, not just us, there's a reference to smaller SKUs here, but you know, can we think of other solutions as well that really bring great hygiene products to people at more affordable and more accessible price points? I'm going to skim over this because we've spoken to a lot of this, but yeah, great word cloud, just summarizing some of the key themes that came through. And I've lost my last slide, which I knew there would be a technical glitch. Sorry, Bev, I have terrible luck with technology. But just in conclusion, before I hand back to Bev, there is a lot more insight that we haven't shared today. We were time limited. But just from our early analyses, we can see that there's a need for affordable hygiene solutions. Maybe that's not new news for us, but it was great confirmation, I think. The level of insight that we got is certainly going to be very helpful. You know, different pack sizes, which we've spoken about, maybe even solutions like packaging free, you know, so really a need to think out the box to make basic hygiene more accessible. The water scarcity and water quality problems, as I said, are really weighing heavy on me, you know, and they're not new news per se. But hearing the feedback again and seeing the images shared has really struck me and reminded me of the realities that we can't ignore as we look to better serve people in Africa. The good news is that at Unilever, we have some of the greatest R&D minds and some of the best R&D facilities. So we're working on this technology, and some other emerging countries in the world, we have the technology available. So the challenge is how we bring it to Africa, in a way that is, again, accessible and offers the right quality for what people need. I've traveled a lot around Africa. I've spent a lot of time in people's homes, in the trade. And many of you will attest to this as well, but there is no shortage of opportunities of where people need help, where they need us to do more, where they need us to innovate. Our biggest challenge often is in prioritizing what to do with the resources we have so that we can efficiently bring the right solutions to the beautiful people of Africa that we serve. And research plays an absolutely pivotal role in this. So with that, I will hand over back to Bev.
Bev, if you can unmute yourself, please. We cannot hear you. Thank you.
Sorry, Alfonso, that's a very good idea. I was just saying to everyone in the webinar, the slide that isn't appearing that Stacey wanted to refer to, it has been included in the PDF copy of this presentation. So everyone's welcome. You have ready access to the PDF version of this work, and you will see the detail on the slide that wasn't there. So in closing, I think what we've really seen today is that bot-enabled research can truly help to humanize the research approach, and it helps to provide a highly personalized touch. Consumers are already naturally digitally engaged, including citizens sitting, below the kind of middle market line. And this makes the approach highly unobtrusive, and it helps to bring how those consumers behave to life and towards us and brands. And what we saw in Stacey's presentation was that it provides a better and highly engaging interface for the consumer, and this includes the consumer who we would need to reach across lower LSMs or lower SECs. It's also a faster way of getting both exploratory and these beautifully rich explanatory insights. And while, again, in this presentation, we haven't included the video material or played actual voice notes for you, know that all of that information comes through in this beautiful approach that we take. The technology can also help us to get more dynamic, deeper, and validated insights. And then, of course, the rich real-time context through text, because this work is turned around really fast. But getting that information in text or images or voice or people recording their opinions in video really helps to narrow the gap between hard-to-reach consumers and the brand. And so, ending off, like Unilever, companies who market brands with meaning are often more successful than others. And we see that from a Nielsen study that 66% of consumers say that they're willing to pay more for purposeful brands. And Unilever is already strongly on that journey and is producing incredible results in this space. We believe, when we think about this from a research perspective, that we're at a pivotal juncture for brands to become more interactive in the way that they do research across Africa, and to leverage technology to better collaborate with Africans, really tapping into their thoughts and opinions directly and without intrusion. So that's our presentation today, and we welcome working through some of the questions that have been put in the chat box. Stacey, shall we work through these? We have a message from Misha, and Misha's question is, Alfonso, do you want to guide this, or are you happy that I take this up?
Fantastic, fantastic. I wanted to thank you both and say great if you can actually walk through the questions. We have great interaction, the audience sending several questions. So yes, Bev, go ahead and you can ask the questions, Perfect. Of course.
Perfect. So the question that Misha has asked is, what is the ideal interview length for a chatbot? Misha, we typically find it's question related, so we would do anywhere between maybe 10 to 15 questions, but included in those questions will be your questions relating to an instruction that will say, now video your opinion about how you feel about XYZ, or show us how you prepare a vegetable meal, and so on, how you wash your hair, that sort of thing. So we would say between 10 and 15 questions, and they really shouldn't be overly complex either. The next question has come from Claire. Thanks, Claire. Claire, you've asked, how do you validate the representativity of your sample? I would just say here, and if we didn't make it clear in our presentation, the starting point for any work that we do is we use our existing proprietary panels. So in South Africa, we have access to, and our panel in South Africa has been around since November 2011. It's a mature, highly established, the biggest proprietary panel in the market. We use our existing panel to access our panelists and then to activate the surveys. And those surveys, and I'm going to answer another question that's coming up. The bot-enabled approach has been developed by our tech team, so we're a tech-driven research business, and all of the development occurs in-house. And over and above that, we are WhatsApp and Facebook approved. So, and the legalities around the extent of sharing have all been taken care of in the approach we use. But those individuals are already highly available and on our panel, and they're really easy for us to access in the right quotas and target group that we need to reach them across. Question number 5 is from Sharon. Thank you. Sharon, you ask, how is this administered? How can I get a little more understanding on the implementation of it and what goes behind it? I'd love to contact you separately, and I'll happily talk you through what the approach, the detailed approach, and the technical aspect of the work looks like, if that's okay with you. You also ask, is there a limit to the number of questions that can be asked? Yes, we think in this early stage, because this is new technology. I know a lot of people have been playing with the technology and they say they have the technology, but actually having it and implementing it and being Facebook and WhatsApp approved is a very different space. So right now, we believe that the optimal approach is to keep it short and to keep it between 10 and 15 questions. Sharon, you also ask, is this available across markets? Yes, it is. Across the world. We have 39 proprietary panels across the world, and we definitely have the technology available in India if you need us to implement the work for you there. In fact, one of our biggest panels sits in India. Raphael, you ask, how did you deal with private policies before reaching out to participants? That's a really easy one, so I'll answer the first part of your question. The first part is all of our panelists are already GDPR and locally for South Africa POPI compliant. And what our legal team, our learning from our legal team was, although we have all of those privacy policies in place that our panelists sign up to and we protect their privacy, because this particular work requires that people share more than they typically would. We will see faces, we may see situational imagery. It required that we went further with the legal framework, and across our panelists, there are those panelists who would and wouldn't agree, and to share to that extent. So we've extended our legal policies, and panelists have subsequently signed up. You also asked, do you buy a mailing with mobile numbers? No, we completely own our panels, and our panelists are extremely well managed, well beyond just research activity. Our panel team do an incredible job of managing our panelists as though they were part of the community to ensure that the work they do and that they feel cared for and that the work they do is purposeful and they're entirely responsible and they take care with the work that they do. You ask because in Brazil, WhatsApp is the main message platform as well as South Africa, but the same restrictions because it's considered more invasive. You will see through the answers that I've given you is because the panelists in our panel, they've all been invited to participate in WhatsApp surveys. So we know which of those panelists are more available, and some are not going to make themselves available. But those that are available are willing to share the extent of rich learnings and insights that we gather through this approach. Tim, your question is to Stacey, I think. So the benefit of bot-enabled, I'll answer, and I'm sure Stacey will answer. For me, I get very excited as both an ex-marketer and now a researcher. My excitement really is about how we're starting to blur the lines between qualitative and quantitative work, and you're getting this beautiful, rich information quite quickly across both areas, and you're able to very quickly validate your quantitative output with the qualitative feedback that's received in the same survey in a very quick, short space of time. Stacey, I don't know if you want to pick up on your view of how you're seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, so I had similar questions, I think, Tim, so thank you for asking. And, you know, I myself was sent the survey link and had a chance to engage with the bot on WhatsApp. I think it's really important to remember, in Africa especially, the median age is 19, so we're very, very young consumer. You know, and you know, they do engage a lot on WhatsApp already. It's how they have deep, meaningful conversations on a day-to-day basis, and we're seeing that, you know, time and time again. Your question on the bot itself and how that helps in terms of replacing an interviewer, I think the point we spoke about earlier around the real-time responsiveness, that's where it really makes a difference. I know we're no stranger to doing research over WhatsApp, and we do a lot of immersions over WhatsApp. But the problem when you have a human moderator is, you know, they respond as and when they can. The research tends to then be very planned and often structured around what the moderator can accommodate versus when the person you're trying to get feedback from actually wants to engage. And I think that's what was really liberating about having the bot, is the bot's always there, it's always on. And that means that the people you're doing the research with, they can engage as and when they want to, and not as and when you as the researcher want to engage them. And that's really powerful. That's when you get the best insights.
I would also just add to that if anyone's interested, and if you follow TED Talks, there's a recent TED Talk that's just been put up where the researcher talks about exactly the comparison between bot surveys and traditional research. And the point she makes in the delivery is that they're finding, particularly around sensitive topics, that when sensitive topics are accompanied by an interviewer, it's possible that there will be overclaiming or underclaiming, depending on the sensitivity of the topic. When, however, they tested that work using bot surveys, they found that the responses, particularly across gender groups on this particular topic, which happened to be how many sexual partners, you know, you had in your lifetime, they found that where men typically overclaim, women underclaim, they found that that both sets of genders responded more normally in that sense. And results were different and they believed truer. So there could be advantages across bot-enabled surveys for that reason. Joanna, I've whacked past you here. Does the chatbot work in Spanish? So yes, we can manage any vernaculars across the platform. And in fact, you know, Stacey and we were talking about, so what do we do differently about the languages that are prevalent across Africa? Because ultimately the purpose of this work is to try to generate far truer responses and to get closer to that individual's truth, particularly if you are marketing around purpose-driven brands. And Stacey had a whole lot of ideas on how we could do things differently. So we'll work with you on that, Stacey. Joanna, you also ask, how do you do the recruitment? So Joanna, we have proprietary panels around the world. They're already in place. And when our teams do a feasibility on a study, they know in advance whether we can reach the target market, what number of samples we can reach of that target market before we even start the work that we do. MK, you ask for Borderless Access team, so that's for us. Are there any plans for a panel in agriculture? I think that's an interesting one. We do all sorts of interesting panels. Can you and I talk about that offline and let me understand what it is you might need, because we may be able to help you. You know, we build, number one is we run our own panels. The other is we also run panels and communities for clients directly. So whether it's for the likes of Facebook, where we run panels of expert advertisers, or whether we run a community of childhood cancer patients, that's all work that we can do. So MK, let's chat and let me understand what your needs are. Misha, can the same be done using chatbots on web-enabled links instead of WhatsApp and Facebook? I may need to get back to you on that, and I'll consult our technical people, Misha. Sanchita, you ask, how's it different from outside voice? I would just need, Stacey, I don't know if you understand the question. I would just need a little understanding of that question. I don't quite understand it right now.
No, neither do I. I thought maybe it was a technical term I wasn't aware of, but I don't know either.
No, me too. So Sanchita, let you and I follow up and hopefully, and if I don't know the answer, I can certainly get our technical team involved and we can help. Han, thanks for your question. Your question is, what is your social eco coverage in India? When you say social eco coverage, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by social eco, but I would just say to you that we cover hard to reach individuals across India, and we have an extremely large panel in India. And we continue to do more work in reaching far-reaching social economic groups in that country. Sharon, have we answered your question? Yes. Ta-da. Yes. Hello, the Flipkart team. Yes. Hi. And that's the method over here. Lovely. We'll reach out to you. Thank you very much. I'm very aware that we do some fantastic work with you. Sanchita, does a chatbot ask questions customized in real time on the answers from the respondents, or is this a set of questions? Yes, so Sanchita, the set of questions is the same. So it's not as advanced as you would suggest. However, depending on the answer and the selection, obviously a different question may come up next depending on the answer given in the primary question asked. Gary, thank you for your question. You ask, the incentivization must be quite high to maintain a panel to answer bot surveys, or was it similar to the online one? So the great thing about bot-enabled surveys is typically they're quick surveys, we can reach audiences quite quickly, and this becomes an incredibly affordable way of running research projects. So yes, we have incentives and point building built into our panel system, but this particular approach is a really cost-effective way to get some beautiful, rich answers across your target audience. Gary, you also asked, what are the different types of research that can be done and administered via this approach? So I would say, you know, we are in the early stages, and we'd love to put it to the test across a variety of study types, but I would, at this stage, limit the work to ad hoc deep dives, so particularly around key business questions like this paper that we've done with Unilever, or we did a paper with Coca-Cola across the awareness of sugar and health issues around soft drinks and sodas. You could also run a fairly thin brand health tracker using this approach, but don't expect that you can build in very complex routing and very complex questionnaires. So that's where I think the limitation right now is. You can get quite complex but with your routing, but there's a lot that has to go on in the background to make that happen. And sometimes some of this work needs to happen really quickly, and you know, clients can't afford to wait for the amount of time it will take to create a more complex questionnaire. Gary, you also asked, what are the benefits of this approach as compared to the running of surveys via SMS or an app? So the bulk of our businesses is run around device agnostic surveys that are run online. And I would say the advantages of this type of research is the quick turnaround, the combination of quali-qual that is delivered, and how rich this information is, and how we can very quickly answer questions that are needed in most businesses. We had a client who ran some work across multi-countries, and I have to say, and the work was done, I think, also in a space of a week. And as the work landed on their desk, they took it into their board, made a decision, and then went with it. So it's that kind of benefit, I think, that this kind of research helps to bring. Hang, you also ask SEC profile. Also in India is a country of low literacy. How do you deal with that? Hang, what I'm going to do there is I would like to put you in touch with our India team, who have far greater depth of understanding of the India market, and will help to answer that question with you offline, if you don't mind. And Alketa, you ask, any experience with B2B projects using the approach? No, but can we do one? We'd love to do one. Let's do it. Not yet, I'm going to say. I'm sure it'll come. This is new technology, right?
What a fantastic way to answer more than 20 questions in a row, Bev. I'm truly impressed. I'm, on behalf of SMR, thanking you and Stacy for this amazing session. I think that, well, you can see through the list of questions, the interaction and the interest on this particular topic. So thank you to you, to the whole team of Borderless Access, to Stacy and Unilever, of course, for being part of this Prime webcast. From my side, I just want to thank everybody for joining. And if you're interested, what is the next event from SMR, the only thing you have to do is there in your resources widget, actually click in the link, what's next? Well, we'll take you to the calendar of events with very cool stuff coming up next week and the week after. So I invite you to do that. And if you want to join SMR as a member, join us to help the industry, the inside industry. Just click in the link, join us, and the team of membership will contact you back. From my side, thank you very much. Wherever you are in the world, following ESOMAR and invite you to the next session. Thank you and bye.